My mother loved only my brother, the golden child. When I moved away from them, I inherited $3.2 million from my aunt, and my parents began threatening me with a lawsuit when my mom married Alex. Everything I thought I knew about family got turned upside down. I was 14, awkward, and just trying to get through high school. My mom, Sarah, had been a single parent my whole life, and while we weren't rolling in money, she'd always made me feel like I was enough. Then she met Alex. Alex had a son, Brandon, who was 17 at the time. He was the golden child from the moment we stepped into his world. He had that kind of confident, carefree attitude that made him popular with adults and, apparently, with my mom too. From day one, I felt like I was some kind of outsider in my own home. They acted like a ready-made family with me as an extra that came along with the package. It didn't take long for me to realize my place in this new dynamic. I'd walk into a room, and Mom and Alex would be sitting with Brandon, laughing or watching TV together. But when I joined, things grew tense, almost like I was intruding. If I tried to talk, the vibe shifted immediately. I got one-word answers or those fake smiles that didn't reach their eyes. One night, I remember coming home late from school. I was on the debate team, and we'd had a late practice. When I walked through the door, Alex was furious, waiting in the kitchen like I'd committed some crime. "Where were you?" he demanded, his voice echoing through the house. I was taken aback. Mom knew I had debate practice, but she was standing behind him, silent. I stammered out the explanation, looking over to her for support, but she just looked at me like I was lying. "It's not safe for you to be out that late," Alex said, shaking his head. Brandon had come home way later than me plenty of times, but somehow that didn't matter. He was responsible. I was reckless. After that, things only got worse. Brandon and I shared a bathroom between our rooms, and every time something was out of place, an empty shampoo bottle, a towel on the floor, it was always my fault. Once, Brandon left his dirty laundry all over the bathroom, and Alex stormed into my room, accusing me of being messy and disrespectful. I tried to explain it wasn't me, but he cut me off, saying, "Don't make excuses, Rachel. Just clean up after yourself." Brandon was in his room the whole time, probably hearing the entire thing and laughing. There was this one weekend that really made me question everything. We were supposed to go to the lake, a family outing as Alex called it. I've been looking forward to it all week. I wasn't naive enough to think it would fix everything, but I was hoping for at least one good memory with all of us together. But that morning, when I was getting ready, Mom came in and said, "Honey, I think it might be best if you stay home this time. Brandon's been stressed with school, and he just needs some time to relax." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I tried to protest, but she'd already decided. They left without me. I spent the whole day alone in the house, feeling like a ghost in what was supposed to be my own family. When they came back, they didn't even ask me how my day was. They just walked in, laughing and talking about the lake like it was some private memory I wasn't allowed to share. Over the next few months, it became clear that I wasn't just an outsider. I was the scapegoat. Every minor issue was somehow my fault. If Brandon got a bad grade, it was because I distracted him with my attitude. If something went missing, I was careless and irresponsible. I once overheard Alex telling my mom, "Rachel's going to end up a problem if we don't put her in line." My own mom just nodded like he was right. Then one afternoon, Brandon and I had our first real confrontation. He was in my room rummaging through my things like he owned the place. I walked in and asked him what he was doing. He just shrugged, pulling out a necklace my dad had given me years ago. "What's this?" he sneered, holding it up. "That's mine," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but he just laughed and dangled it in front of me, making a game out of it. I reached out to grab it, and he yanked it back, still laughing. I was fuming. We started shouting at each other, and my mom and Alex came running. But instead of asking what happened, they immediately turned on me. "Why are you always causing problems?" Alex snapped. "Mom, he was in my room." I protested. "He was going through my stuff." But she didn't listen. "Rachel, can you stop being so difficult? Brandon's just trying to get along with you." That night, I sat in my room, replaying the whole situation in my head. It didn't matter what I said or did. I could never win. To them, I was the problem, no matter how hard I tried. It wasn't long after Mom and Alex got married that things went from bad to worse. Every day felt like a battle where, no matter what happened, I was the one left with the blame. Brandon's behavior only added fuel to the fire. He was messy, disruptive, and seemed to make it his mission to push every possible boundary in the house. But it was like nobody else saw it but me. One night, Brandon threw a party in the basement while Alex and Mom were out. I kept to my room, trying to drown out the music and the noise of his friends stomping around the house. They left trash everywhere, empty soda cans, snack wrappers, you name it. I didn't touch any of it, figuring Brandon would clean up his own mess. But the next morning, Alex barged into my room, furious. "Rachel, this place is a disaster," he yelled, waking me up. "How could you be so irresponsible?" I tried to explain that it wasn't me, that I hadn't even gone downstairs, but he didn't want to hear it. "It's everyone's responsibility to keep this house clean," he said. "I don't care if Brandon made the mess. You're part of this family too, and you need to help clean up." He walked out before I could even respond. Later that year, Mom announced that she was pregnant. I thought maybe, just maybe, things would change. Maybe a new baby would make her feel like we were all a family. But as her pregnancy progressed, the house began to change, and I started to feel like more of an outsider than ever. Then one afternoon, Mom dropped the bomb. She came into my room with Alex and said, "Rachel, we need to talk. Since the baby will be here soon, we're thinking it would be best if you moved into the guest room." I was stunned. "Move? This is my room. Where am I supposed to go?" "The guest room," Alex replied, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. "We'll turn this room into the nursery for the baby. It's just better this way." "But I've been here my whole life," I stammered, unable to hide my shock. I looked at Mom, hoping she'd see how much this was hurting me, but she just gave me that same blank, indifferent look she always did. "Now it's just a room, Rachel," she said softly. "You'll be fine in the guest room. Besides, it's only fair. We need to make space for the new baby, don't we?" That weekend, Alex and Brandon moved my things into the guest room. It was tiny compared to my old room, barely big enough to fit my bed and desk. I stood there, staring at the plain, cold walls, feeling like I was a guest in my own house. All of my posters, my books, my personal things, they were now shoved into this tiny room that had none of the warmth or familiarity of my old space. I didn't even have my own closet anymore. They left most of my clothes in the hallway closet because there wasn't enough room in here. As the weeks went on, my old room was transformed into the nursery. I'd walk by and see Mom and Alex painting the walls, setting up a crib, picking out baby clothes, all while I sat alone in my cramped space, forgotten. Brandon seemed to take full advantage of my isolation. With Mom's attention focused on the baby and Alex wrapped up in helping her, he got away with everything. Once, I found him in the guest room, digging through my things. "What are you doing?" I demanded, feeling a surge of anger. "Relax. I'm just looking for a charger," he said, not even glancing up. He kept rifling through my drawer, and when he finally found what he wanted, he smirked and walked out like he owned the place. I told Mom and Alex about it, hoping they'd finally see how disrespectful he was, but they just shrugged it off. "It's just a charger, Rachel," Mom said, exasperated. "Why do you always make such a big deal out of everything?" A few weeks later, Adam was born, my new baby brother. Everyone was over the moon, and for a brief moment, I thought things might change. Holding him for the first time, I felt a spark of hope, a belief that maybe he could bring us all together. But that hope was quickly snuffed out. From the moment he was born, Adam became the center of Mom's world. She'd spend hours in the nursery with him, doting on him, singing to him, talking about how he was the miracle our family had been waiting for. I tried to be involved, offering to help with feeding or changing diapers, but she always brushed me off. "Adam's just too little for you to handle," she'd say, or "I need to be the one to do it. You'll understand when you're older." It was like she didn't trust me with him, like I was somehow a threat to this perfect little family she'd created. As Adam grew, Brandon only got worse. He'd leave his dirty clothes in the hallway, dishes piled up in his room, and food wrappers strewn around the house. Every time Alex or Mom found a mess, I was the one who got the blame. "Rachel, why can't you clean up after yourself?" Alex would scold. "But it's not me. It's Brandon," I protested, but my words always fell on deaf ears. "It doesn't matter who did it," he'd say. "You live here too, so take responsibility." One day, I found Brandon's friends lounging around the house while he was blasting music in the living room. They'd eaten half the snacks in the kitchen, leaving wrappers everywhere. I tried to clean up after them, not wanting to get blamed again, but as soon as Alex walked in and saw me picking up, he shook his head. "Rachel, I'm disappointed in you. You know we don't leave messes like this." I opened my mouth to explain, but he cut me off. "No excuses, young lady. You need to start respecting this house." I was livid. The unfairness of it all was suffocating. I stormed off to my tiny room, slamming the door behind me. I sat on my bed, clutching my pillow, feeling like I was trapped in some kind of nightmare. I wanted to scream, to cry, to do something that would make them see me, hear me, understand that I wasn't the problem. As the months went by, I tried to keep my head down, hoping that things would get better, but they only got worse. One evening, I accidentally knocked over a vase while reaching for a book in the living room. It shattered on the floor, and before I could even react, Alex was there, glaring at me. "What's wrong with you, Rachel?" he snapped. "Why can't you be more careful?" Brandon was sitting on the couch, smirking. I could feel his gaze on me, reveling in my humiliation. I wanted to yell, to tell them it wasn't fair, but I knew it wouldn't make a difference. I cleaned up the broken vase all while Alex and Mom watched, shaking their heads. That night, I lay in my cramped room, staring at the ceiling, feeling more alone than ever. It was clear that I didn't belong here. Not in this house, not in this family. I was just an inconvenience, a reminder of the life Mom had left behind. And as much as it hurt, I knew that no amount of hoping would change that. It was around my junior year of high school that I started to realize if I was going to survive, I'd have to spend as little time at home as possible. Living under Mom, Alex, and Brandon's constant scrutiny had worn me down, and every day felt like a tightrope walk between triggering their disapproval or going unnoticed. So I threw myself into everything outside of the house: work, friends, studying, anything to be somewhere else. My first escape came when I landed a job at a local coffee shop. It was run by a kind woman named Denise, a former teacher with a warm smile and endless patience. Denise treated me with a level of respect I hadn't felt in years, and I clung to that job like a lifeline. I started off working just weekends, but soon I'd added as many shifts as I could get away with. Denise noticed I was always eager to take extra hours, and one day while we were closing up, she asked me about it. "Rachel, you've been taking on a lot," she said gently, but with that observant tone that only teachers have. "Are you okay?" For a second, I thought about opening up, telling her everything, but the words felt heavy, tangled in years of silence. I just nodded. "Yeah, just saving up for college." I lied, but she didn't push that. Working at the coffee shop introduced me to other people my age who felt like more than just friends. They became my escape, my temporary family. I grew close to a girl named Emma, a regular who came in every morning for a caramel latte before school. Emma was bubbly, funny, and kind in a way that made her seem like the opposite of everyone I'd grown up with. She listened without judgment and didn't just see me as Rachel with a messed up home life. Over time, she became my confidant, the person I'd vent to about all the things I kept bottled up. One afternoon, while we sat on the coffee shop's patio during my break, I finally spilled about Brandon and the endless battles at home. Emma listened, her face shifting from shock to sympathy as I laid out the constant accusations, the blame, and the feeling of being invisible. "Rachel, that's insane," she said, looking horrified. "Why don't you tell your mom how you feel?" I gave a bitter laugh because she wouldn't care. Or worse, she'd just turn it back on me like it's my fault. I took a shaky breath, finally putting into words the thing I'd always known deep down. It's like I'm not even part of the family anymore. I'm just there and inconvenienced. Emma reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "That's not okay, Rachel. You deserve better than that." For the first time, someone had said it out loud. I deserve better. The thought had never even crossed my mind. Emma's support became a new foundation for me, and the more I confided in her, the more I saw just how toxic my home environment had become. Things at home didn't improve. If anything, they got worse. Brandon's behavior was escalating. He'd started skipping classes, throwing parties even when Mom and Alex were home, and treating the house like his personal playground. I knew he was doing it to get under my skin, and the more I stayed away, the more he tried to make me miserable when I was home. But even with his increasingly disruptive behavior, I was still the one who got blamed. If anything went wrong, Alex and Mom would look at me with the same disappointed expression as if I was somehow responsible for Brandon's behavior. One night, after a particularly rough shift, I came home to find that someone had rummaged through my things in the guest room. My laptop was left open, papers scattered across the bed, and my clothes thrown around like someone had gone through every drawer. Brandon was nowhere to be found, but I knew it had to be him. I marched to the living room, where Mom was sitting with Adam, and demanded an explanation. "Brandon was just looking for something," she said casually, not even looking up. "There's no need to get dramatic about it." "Dramatic?" He went through my personal stuff. "Mom," I felt my voice rise, the frustration bubbling over. "Rachel, you're being unreasonable," she replied coldly. "If you weren't so secretive all the time, maybe this wouldn't happen." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own mother was standing up for him again, like it was normal for him to invade my privacy. It was one of those moments where the last bit of hope I'd held on to shattered completely. After that, I made it my mission to start saving up even harder. I took on more hours at the coffee shop, skipped most school dances, and turned down invites to hang out if it meant saving more money. I opened up to Denise one night, finally admitting why I was working so much. I just, I need to get out of that house. I told her quietly as we wiped down tables after closing. She looked at me, her expression soft with understanding. I figured as much, she said, putting a hand on my shoulder. If you ever need anything, help with school, or even just a place to crash, you let me know, okay? Her kindness nearly brought me to tears, and for the first time, I felt a real sense of hope. I started researching what I'd need to move out. Emma helped me look up affordable apartments, and we even went to a few open houses together, dreaming about freedom. But then, Alex and Mom started noticing my absence, and they didn't like it. One night, Alex confronted me when I got home from work. He asked why I was always gone, why I didn't try harder to be part of the family. His words were dripping with blame, like I was the one breaking things apart. Rachel, you've been distant. This isn't healthy for any of us, he said, as if he'd suddenly decided to play the concerned parent. If you're going to be part of this family, you need to put in the effort. I couldn't help but laugh a bitter sound. I haven't meant to leave the family. I repeated, when have any of you ever treated me like family? Mom, she said exasperated, don't talk to your father like that. I told him, he's not my father, I replied, the words slipping out before I could stop them. I'd never said it out loud before, but it felt like a release. After that, things were tense. They monitored me more closely, limiting how often I could leave the house. They even started questioning who I was spending time with, demanding I spend more time with the family. It was suffocating and only fueled my determination to leave. Finally, by the end of my senior year, I had enough saved up. Emma and I found a small apartment not far from the coffee shop, and I signed the lease. I didn't tell anyone at home until the day I was ready to move out. I waited until Mom and Alex were both in the living room, then calmly announced my plan. I'm moving out, I said, keeping my voice steady. Mom looked at me, stunned, while Alex just shook his head. You're being ridiculous, Rachel. Where will you even go? I found an apartment, I replied simply. I'm leaving tonight. They tried to talk me out of it. Mom saying I was too young to be on my own, and Alex claiming I was making a huge mistake. But for the first time, I felt completely sure of myself. I packed my things, loaded them into Emma's car, and left without looking back. As we drove away, I felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. I had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in years, I felt free. It had been a few years since I moved out and started to build my life outside the shadow of Mom, Alex, and Brandon. Living on my own, I'd started to feel stronger and more capable, ever happy. I'd gone to college, built a career, and made new friends. For the first time, I felt like I was in control of my own life, far removed from the toxic dynamics of my past. I still saw Mom occasionally, out of some lingering sense of duty, but every visit reminded me why I'd left. There was no warmth, no real connection, just strained, distant politeness. Then one evening I got a call from Mom. Her voice sounded tight, strained in a way I hadn't heard before. Rachel, she began, I thought you should know. Alex had a seizure. He's in the hospital. A cold feeling washed over me. Despite everything, the thought of Alex being seriously ill stirred something in me. I knew our relationship had never been warm or fatherly, but hearing he was in the hospital triggered a mix of worry, confusion, and some deep-rooted loyalty. Is he okay? I asked cautiously. I don't know, she replied. They're running tests. No more soon. A cold feeling washed over me, despite everything. I felt a pang of sympathy, thinking of how scared she must be. I decided to visit Alex in the hospital more out of respect than affection. When I arrived, the tension in the air was palpable. Brandon was already there, standing beside Mom, who looked drained and exhausted. The sight of them together felt strangely familiar, like I was walking back into my childhood, a scene where they all stood together and I stood apart, feeling like an outsider all over again. As I listened to the doctors explain his condition, I learned that Alex had been diagnosed with a condition that left his health in an uncertain balance. Mom clung to Brandon and seemed to lean on him for support in a way she'd never done with me. I didn't expect anything else at this point, but seeing it felt like salt in an old wound. Over the next few days, Mom began hinting about Alex's concerns with his affairs. He'd started talking about setting things in order for the future. The way she said it felt ominous. Then, one day, she came over to talk to me directly.